Hello, welcome to another car repair video. This 2007 Chevy Equinox needs struts. In this video, I am going to be replacing the right front strut, and we are going to start with jacking up the vehicle. You can take note where I am jacking it on the subframe, and it's a good solid place to jack and get the tire and wheel off the ground. Does not have to be real high, but just high enough that we can get the tire and wheel off. And I'm going to soon say that is good enough. It's also about as high as my floor jack will go. Also, in the sake of safety, I'm going to use a jack stand under the subframe farther back than where I jacked the vehicle. And we'll one, it's safe. Two, I can take the jack out from under it to have extra room. I needed to jack the vehicle up a little more. I want the jack stand just a little higher, and now we're just going to carefully set the vehicle down on the jack stand and remove the floor jack. And now we can remove the tire. I'm using a 3/4 inch impact socket, my cordless impact wrench. This nice, the tire and wheel stuck on. Okay, we kicked it came off. Sometimes I even have used, like where I kicked it, used a sledgehammer, but that was not on too bad, that tire and wheel. And here I'm going to show you why I'm tearing this apart. This spring is broke. As you can see, it's been broke a while. It's rusty at the edge of broke. This is not my vehicle. I'm working on it for another person, and I was checking it over and I found these broke springs. And now before we start removing hardware, we're going to spray everything with some PB Blaster. Always a good first step, especially in salt belt climates such as I live. I first sprayed the stabilizer bar, the upper bolt, and now I'm spraying the strut bolt itself to the steering knuckle, and this little bolt that holds the brake caliper flex hose. Now it is time to remove with an 18mm socket the bolt that holds the stabilizer linked to the strut. We only need to remove this upper bolt and see if I can get lucky and it will just come with the impact wrench. And it was too tight. All it was doing was spinning around. Sometimes that works, sometimes it don't. So now we're going to take an 18mm wrench and a hex key that's made to sit in the middle of this stud to hold it so it does not turn while you're loosening it, and see if we can get it to work free. Personally, if this would be my vehicle, I would just put new stabilizer links on it and save a lot of aggravation, but the person only wants the struts changed. He didn't want to spend any more money, so we're going to see if we can get them off, although we still might lose the battle. It is actually turning the nut, and if you see, I have the ratchet jammed against the strut, so I don't have to actually per se hold it with my other hand. Now we'll spray some more PB Blaster and hope for the best. And of course the strips. As you heard me say, the Allen key stripped out, it was not holding, but let me see if I can try a different Allen key. And besides a different Allen key, I'm going to try heating the bolts some. I do have torches, and that might do the trick. Okay, the bolt was starting to get red. Unfortunately, that's sort of the problem that you turn the torches off and move around, it starts to cool off. The faster you can start turning after you heat, the merrier. But the nut is turning some again, so we're making a little headway, and we'll try heating it again. And of course you did. This time, since it was farther off, I'm using a ratcheting wrench so I can make more progress in a shorter time. And you see with the heat and the ratcheting wrench, we're making pretty good headway of getting this nut turned off. But unfortunately it cooled off again, and now the rust is making it tighten back up the nut, so we're going to heat it another time. I'm going to say that looks very hot, and it's still staying red a longer time because I heated it a longer period, and yep, it's going to go this time. With one exception, the Allen key on the ratchet now is getting in the way. Now, believe it or not, the first one stripped out and it wouldn't stay in. I can't get the Allen key out, but there I did. And there you can see it's down to all but a few threads. Now we'll just see if we can take them carefully. And remember, if you do have heat, and as much as we heat it on this, don't touch it for a while. It's hot. There is the stabilizer link removed from the strut and out of our way. Now it is time to remove the strut nuts and bolts, but before I do so, I'm going to make life easy. I'm going to turn the steering wheel towards the left of the vehicle so they're easier to get the wrench on. They're facing out towards the working area on the right side, and using a 21mm socket and our impact wrench, we'll see if we can get these to turn off. And surprisingly, the first one came off no problem at all. Now let's see if we have as much success getting the second nut off. And yes, the impact wrench did turn the nut off. My impact wrench has had its better days. And now I'm going to take and just unplug the wire for the anti-lock brake sensor. I don't know why I was trying to take it out of the bracket at first, and lay that out of the way. And I'm also going to turn the steering wheel that the wheels would be in the straight ahead position. And now we have to take and get this little bolt that holds the brake caliper flex hose bracket, which 9 times out of 10 they snap off, but this one did not snap off, but it also is turning hard. The good news, if yours does break when you're taking yours off, if you're replacing struts, it's not a big deal. You'll just need another bolt to replace the broke bolt, and that's the end of the story on that. And you can see why it was turning out hard, even with spraying it with the PB blaster. That is rusty. Going to remove the floor jack out from under the control arm. I just put a little pressure against it to get the stabilizer link out of the strut. And now I'm going to take and turn the nut back on the strut, the bolt there, and try to pound it out of the steering knuckle with this little hammer. Well, it's not working. The hammer's just not adequate enough for the job. The main objective, I don't want to mushroom the bolt. That's why I turned the nut on flush with the end of the nut on flush with the end of the bolt, but there the little bit larger hammer did break it free. And you can see the nut's still turning off nice. I did not damage the threads. And now I can use the little hammer. It should take this the rest of the way out. Yep, no problem on that. And you can see the top of that has like teeth. It's meant to like grip into the steering knuckle itself on the vehicle. That's where I did not prefer to actually ruin the bolt, because that is a nice feature that keeps you from having to hold the other end when you're turning the nuts off with the wrench. And see if we can knock the bottom one out. And it's going. They're starting to move. The top bolt removed, there's just enough tension on it. I can't pull it out with my fingers, and there a punch did the job with the little hammer, and there move our knuckle out of the way. You notice we did not have to remove the tie rod or the brake caliper. Alrighty, we're getting close to having this strut taken out. Open the hood, and now we get to work up on top of the vehicle instead of kneeling at the side of it. Open the hood, and then we're going to go back, and there is, from the top, There are 3 bolts here that need to be removed, and there you can see the bolts that we're going to be taking out. Furthermore, these bolts are 13mm head, at least on this vehicle, and I'm just going to, they're not real tight. 3/8 inch ratchet is taking the first one out easily. We're down to the last one. I'm going to use an extension on it because once you start loosening this, well, the strut starts coming out at the same time, so you have to keep pressure up against it so the bolt turns out easy. This would actually, if you had a second person to help you, would work out really easy to have a person hold up on the strut while one turned the bolt out, but I don't. So you see I'm holding and sort of reaching up over the top of the fender, turning the bolt at the same time, while again keeping tension on the strut. And there is the bolt down to the last couple of threads, and you can see the strut's all ready to come out. There is one particular angle when you're coming out. If you look down between the control arm and the brake hose, it'll fall right down and then tilt it out towards the outside, and out comes the strut. It's sort of, again, it just comes out one way, and there's another look that it's out at the broken spring one more time. And then we'll go here and take and see our new struts. I bought them at NAPA. How could you guess? And there is the part number. They are, the one I was first pointing to was the one for the left side, and this is the one we need, is the one on the bottom. And we'll open it up. And I bought the quick struts. There's no need to disassemble anything. Well, again, the springs were broke. That was sort of the one inspiration to buy the quick struts. And there you can see the part number for the one on the right side. Before installing the new strut, I just put them here side by side to be sure they are identical, and they are. I'm going to take the sticker off the top, warning you not to disassemble this without proper tools or the spring will get you. And it comes with new bolts. Then we'll turn those out. Over the years, I have put many new struts on cars, but this is actually the first vehicle that I've put struts on that they're bolts at the top, not studs and nuts. They're usually a stud at the top of the strut mount that sticks up through, and then there's a nut that goes on. The other way is easier, but this isn't too bad. Now over time we can lift the new strut in, sort of reverse of taking it out. Without a doubt, getting the first bolt to line up is the trickiest. Once you have the first one, the other two, I'm not going to tighten them till I start the other two in, but shouldn't be that hard to get. And you can see there's the second one in. And now we just have to start one more, and then they can all be tightened. And according to the instructions, I'm really not that technical on the struts. We're not working on the motor, but they are to be tightened 22 to 29 foot-pounds. So I have a torque wrench. Well, they are tight enough. The bolt's on top. Now we get to go put the knuckle back into the strut itself. And to be able to start the bolt back in between the strut and the steering knuckle, I'm going to use a punch, and should be able to slide the bolt in now. And there you can see that went in simple enough. That actually went better than a lot of times I've had them go in the past. There we go. And since those bolts at the top have those grooves to sit in the steering knuckle, that's as far as they're going to go without taking and tightening the nut, which will pull the bolt the rest of the way in. Same principle if you've ever changed a wheel stud on a car. The same way this principle works. I'm pulling these back in. And my impact wrench is not going to pull them in the whole way. When it was new it would have, but it's about 5 years old now, so I'm going to just use the ratchet and take and turn. You can see now it's pulling the bolt the rest of the way into the steering knuckle. Again, the impact wrench started, but it did not have the torque anymore to pull them the whole way through. And for those who are technical, these are to be tightened between 73 and 97 foot-pounds, which I'm pretty much sure we're there. But as I made the comment earlier, I have a torque wrench, and we'll be technical. We'll check them. And now I will plug the anti-lock brake sensor back in. Nothing hard here to do. And it leaves us with bolting the brake flex hose bracket back to the strut. The little bit of PB blaster on the threads hopefully will allow the bolt to turn in easier than it came out. Even though I sprayed it with the PB blaster. And now we're going to take and the stabilizer bar link refastens to the strut, but I'm first going to take, because it helps it line up with the hole, the stud on the stabilizer link, by putting a little bit of tension against the lower control arm with the floor jack, and now it pushes right into place. And now, since I'm turning the stud knob, not getting any accomplishment on just turning the nut, I'll have to use the Allen key and hold it back in place. And there it's tightening up as it should. As I mentioned earlier, if this would be my vehicle, I would have put new stabilizer links on it, but the person that I'm working on this for didn't want to spend the extra money, so anyhow, it's back on. And now we can just get rid of the jack stand from under the vehicle and put the tire and wheel on. But first, we're going to get the floor jack slid under the subframe where we ejected earlier. I left the jack stand under the vehicle temporarily, but I did have to jack the vehicle up because after I sat it down on the jack stand, it was too low to put the tire and wheel back on. So that's why we did jack it up some, but I will wait till the tire and wheel's on just in case it would fall at this moment. Also, these lug nuts are, some of them, actually just this one I think, are messed up. That chrome covering gets rust in between it and the nut, and then at times it makes the socket nut want to come off the lug nut. Again, if it would be mine, I'd invest in 5 lug nuts. But anyhow, there's the jack stand out from under it. And now we can set it back down, and that concludes the video. I hope you found the information in this helpful for your job.